And then, of course, another major album for you was this one here, Thriller, and it's so cool because you obviously wrote Human Nature, which I would say is probably one of my favorite songs ever. I remember when I interviewed David, I told him how it was like, whenever I hear that song, I just kind of drift off and start thinking about life and that sort of thing. And it's interesting because that song kind of ended up in Quincy Jones' possession almost by accident. Is that correct?
Yes. He was he heard it. It was unfinished. Certainly the lyrics weren't done. The track was pretty much done, the way I had demoed it. And there was my rough vocal on it, but it was on the other side of a tape of a couple of David Page's songs.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of heard by accident. I never would have turned it in. It was unfinished. The lyrics weren't finished. I was singing on it. I would have never submitted something for Michael Jackson with me singing on it. But Quincy, in his words, what he was so attracted to was the atmosphere. That was what really attracted him, was that world that we were in.
Yeah. And the process of putting the song together, how did that go?
It was incredibly smooth because Quincy was so respectful of my demo. He loved my demo so much. We kind of recreated it in the studio. Now, of course, he once he had that, which was the same basic drum machine part, my sequenced bass part, me playing the GS1 is with the basic Rhodes part, David Page playing the playing synth pads. David added that sequenced line at the beginning. That was David's idea. I sequenced it. We were such a good team. And then of course Quincy brought Lukather in, my bandmate, and had him play that guitar part that I never would have thought of in a million years, and totally made it a Michael Jackson tune.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made it a Michael Jackson tune. When I first heard it, I was taken aback. I hated it because it was the one thing that was so different than my demo. And then, of course, Quincy, being the great producer that he is, he hooked me up with John Bettis to finish the lyrics. He loved my chorus and loved my title, but, he brought in John Bettis, which I was, thrilled, who just did an incredible job with the verse lyrics and really made it a good song, not only a good record, but a good song, and gave it a narrative. And I'm forever thankful he did.
Yeah. And of course, to kind of show how I guess revered that song is, a lot of people may not know that Miles Davis did a cover of Human Nature.
He sure did.
Mm-hmm.
He sure did. Something I was very proud of. Growing up before the Beatles, yeah, there was some classical music, some big bands, some popular music in our household, but 80%, 85% of what we heard was Miles Davis quintets. Those were my dad's favorite. Miles and Coltrane were the guys, and those drummers, in those mid 50s to mid 60s. Miles Davis quintets, that was all we heard in our household. So the fact to get something, for Miles to cover it was a huge deal.
Absolutely. And just keeping it on Thriller here again, what's another story or memory you have from the making of that record that really sticks out with you?
Everything else I did on Thriller was what I typically did. On a session, on a Quincy Jones session. Although Quincy, I first met him through David Foster. David Foster brought me in to program for David Foster, who was doing keyboards. We were quite a potent team. But by the time Thriller came along, Quincy was hiring me just to, he'd often bring me in and just say, what do you hear on something? And quite often there was already something else there. He just wanted to hear what ideas I had. I'm sure like almost every single song on Thriller at one point I put a part on. But, that was something Quincy did a lot. Was he would try different ideas. It didn't mean just because you played on it didn't mean it was going to be kept. So yeah, the other things I did on Thriller were just my typical session kind of things I did on the spot, ideas I had on the spot, or a section they would need beefing up, like on Beat It or something like that, in the bridge and the breakdown. I did some sequencer parts. The Girl Is Mine, I did some overdubs. Yeah, and then on the Rod Tepperton song "Lady in My Life," I did something on PYT too. I did a very simple synth part on that, and then "Lady in My Life" was a Rod Tepperton tune, and I could tell what synthesizer she had used on his demo, and I had that synth, and had my guys bring that synth in and just try to help him recreate his demo.
Awesome. Yeah.
One of the last things we did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.